Live. I just posted in my story so people know.
Me too.
Cool. Cool, cool. What are you working on?
Oh, I am crocheting.
I see that. What are you crocheting?
I'm doing a blanket. I got a bunch of scraps from a yarn advent from Meg of Bad Wolf Girl Studios. And I got a giant thing of acrylic to hold with it. Because I don't like little blankets, like lightweight fingering weight blankets. I'm like, okay, I'm gonna hold it with this. I'm doing 6 squares. So that's how wide it's gonna be and how tall it's gonna be. And then I'm just going to sew them together. And I'm going to have, since they're all striping one way, they're gonna go like this down the whole thing. That'll be fun.
That's cute. And that's gonna be big. That'll be a good size.
Yeah, it's for our spare bedroom. I would love to have it done within like a week or so. They started it yesterday, so I'm like,
oh,
I think it'll be done. I would love to have it. Oh,
yeah.
I know. That's the only reason I'm not knitting it, because I don't necessarily love crochet anymore. So, but I'm not gonna knit a blanket.
No, that's what I was just thinking, like, what am I gonna do with my advents? And I was like, maybe I'll just crochet them. And the other day I crocheted a little stuffy for my nephew for Christmas, and like 2 hours maybe, and my hand was killing me. And I was like, oh my gosh, I can't crochet. I can't do this. It was hurting so much.
I think it's actually really good to switch it up a little bit. I just got a loom a few weeks ago.
Mm-hmm.
And I've been playing on that when my hands hurt too much from knitting. And crochet is another thing that, like, it utilizes a lot of the same muscles, but not the same movements. Yeah. And so it's good to switch it up when your hands are hurting, even if it's something similar, but you're doing the different movements. So it's not like arthritis kicking in as much. Yeah.
That's probably why it hurts so much, because I haven't crocheted in so long that they're
probably
sore. Hi, Jess. We have 4 people on. I wonder if one of them is Mia. Do you know Mia, Trysten? The goddess. She is amazing. She's 14, I think, 13 or 14, and she is amazing crocheter, knitter, tests all these patterns, like amazing. And I love her. She's like an awesome human. And the other day, after I think 2 weeks ago at this point, she messaged me and was like, I just want to let you know, like, I always watch your lives, but because I'm only 14, I can't comment on so she's like, just know I'm there. So I say hi to Mia. In case
hi, Mia.
Emma's with us. Hey, Emma. Oh, cool. Oh, fun. Okay, people are hopping in. So
everyone,
jump in and get started. I have the comments up, so I'll try and keep an eye on those if folks have any questions or things to share, kind of as we go. Otherwise, welcome back to, I think it's week 9. Jess, you probably know more than I do. I think it's week 9 of the Self-Care Collaborative. I'm so excited that you could join us here, whether you're joining us live or catching up with us later. On this cozy Sunday. It's the Sunday after Christmas. I think people are like in like food coma mode and like chilling on the couch and hanging out. And so I thought it would be really fun to check in with a good friend of mine this week. And I'm super excited. It's actually funny because over the past 2 months, I'm like, oh, I'm here with one of my friends. It's so exciting, my fiber friend. But Trysten, you're actually one of the only fiber friends that I've actually met in person, because Rhinebeck was my first ever yarn festival. And I was like so nervous and I didn't talk to many people. And so you and your mom probably are like the 2 yarn friends I've actually met with and spoken to in real life. So I'm super excited that you're.
So you didn't talk to many people but me. You flashed me your butt.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Like you're shy, but not that shy.
Yeah. It's like an interesting thing for me. Flashing butt, that's okay. Talking to people I don't know is like scary.
Yeah, right. Right.
Yeah.
I just love that you jumped full, like both feet in. I want to go to a knitting festival. Let's go to the biggest one of the year.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
I loved it. I loved it.
Yeah, exactly. But go ahead. Why don't you go ahead and introduce yourself? I'm assuming most folks know who you are, but in case there's someone out there who doesn't.
Oh, there's always someone who doesn't. Hi, everyone. I'm Trysten. I'm the dyer behind Dragon Horde Yarn and Dragon Horde Designs. What do you want to know?
Where can they find you?
Oh, yes. See, I told you I haven't done this in a while. You can find me on Instagram as Dragon Horde Yarn, Dragon_Horde_Yarn. And on Ravelry is Dragon Horde Designs, and on Ribbler as Trysten Molina or Dragon Horde Designs. And my website, dragonhordeyarnco.com. And I'm basically just on Instagram for the most part, though. That's where I'm the most active. And that's where I get to meet all the people and interact with everyone and check in on Bree here.
And tell the people, Trysten, what you're wearing.
Oh, okay. I'm wearing my Salem sweater. It's one of my newer designs this year. It came out, oh God, when did it come out? In October, the beginning of October, I believe. And it's just a nice comfy split hem, top down in the round raglan, but like boxy type. So it's more of a dolman shape. But it's my favorite thing right now. And I wanted to be comfy and cozy while doing the interview. It's kind of funny. I put it on like 5 sweaters. I'm like, this won't work. This won't work. But this one's comfy. And so I'm like, okay, this will work. This will be fine.
Because it has that like comfy, sweatshirty, cozy up on the couch.
Mm-hmm.
Like it looks without being like sloppy or some like if they're too oversized or they're not like fitted correctly.
Yeah.
Look neat. And so that's like the perfect shape.
Honestly, it's all about the short rows, I think, and the shoulders. I've been working for years now because I started out as a yarn dyer and didn't jump into design work until about a year and a half in because math is scary. But I figured out that I don't need to do the math to design. So that was nice. But it took me forever to figure out my method of short rows or my measurements for short rows to make it feel comfy up here because a lot of short rows are just at the back of the neck and it just goes to about right here back and forth. And so since I started coming across the front and crossing over and stuff, it's like elegant but comfy. And I like it.
Yeah, it's gorgeous. Jess said that better. Lots of hard eyes. I know, it's amazing. And those colors too. It's so funny because I remember when you posted it, I was like, oh my gosh, like what colorway is that? And I was like trying to figure it out. And then I realized the two that you held together, I was like, that is not what I imagined they were going to look like.
Oh,
so
no.
I couldn't figure it out.
No, I was so surprised. And I've had a few people message me because I did kits for this and I'll be bringing kits back in the new year too. But because I use Prudence and Dorcas, which are both from the Sabrina collection that I did. And Prudence is like so purple. It's almost brown with like gray in it mixed in. And then Dorcas is like a vivid burgundy with browns in it. And so when people got their kits, they're like, what is this? This isn't what I ordered. I'm like, no. You have to hold them together. Trust me. Because it's so amazing what like mohair and Surrey will do. I always love telling people it like airbrushes an effect across it. And I really wanted to play around with like even having a lace panel or like a cabled panel because it still shows up when you play around correctly with mohair, which is not putting a variegated mohair on top of a solid, but you can put a solid mohair on top of a variegated yarn or speckled yarn. And so it was a lot of fun to kind of play with that texture that it gave me because I wasn't expecting it, but I do love it.
Yeah, it's great. It's perfect. So tell us a little bit, Trysten, you like mentioned a little bit here and there. So obviously you're a yarn dyer, but tell us, and now a designer, but tell us about like your journey in the fiber world and how you got in here.
Well, I feel like I just barely got into the knitting world, and then I feel like I've been here forever at the same time. But I just found out like what kind of time frame was. I'm like, okay, I've been in it for about 5 years now in like the online aspect, the online world of it. And I always kind of tie everything to Instagram because that's where we all socialize. But I jumped in about 5 years ago, started dyeing yarn because, oh dang, it goes back further, never mind. Okay, I started crocheting when I was about 7 years old. My mom taught me and I picked it up off and on since I was really little, but I didn't know that there were actually like patterns or anything. And so I would just come up with these things, not write them down, just be like, okay, I remember, it's cool, I'll make some more. And I stopped doing it for a while and picked it back up my senior year. And after a couple more years, my mom was like, you need to learn how to knit. I'm like, no, I freaking hate knitting. I hate knitting. No, it takes so long. It is unforgiving. If you make a mistake, you have to go back all the way. And
oh, that's funny.
Oh, it was so hard. It was so hard. But once I learned it, it took me about 3 times to actually be like, okay, I do like knitting. And it was at the same time that I was working at a girls' home, a treatment center for mental health. And I was actually teaching them mindfulness with crocheting and knitting, because with crochet, it is very forgiving. And so those who had a lot of anxiety, they could start off with crochet, make a mistake, can rip back, it's fine, you can keep going. And then they'd like graduate to knitting, where it's like it's not as forgiving, but it's still okay. So it was actually really fun to learn how to knit with that. And then my mom forced me to learn how to dye yarn. It was so funny because my mom's the dyer behind Yarn Cafe Creation, so she has her own line as well. And she started dyeing one day. I think she was watching a YouTube video and she's like, I'm gonna do this, this sounds like fun. And then she had me come over like 2 months later and she's like, you got to do this. And I did it. And it was a lot of fun. And so she sent me home with little Ziploc baggies full of powder and like 10 skeins of yarn that I bought off of her that weren't even, they were like Joann's yarn that had a little bit of wool content. I'm like, this will work. So, because she was like, Trysten, I'm going to build a yarn empire. It's going to be amazing. I'm like, I know it is, Mom. It's going to be so good. And so,
funny.
Oh, it was so great, but it kind of like, it took off more so than I thought. And I was going to college during all this, getting my bachelor's degree in psychology. And I was going to go into something completely different, but just along the way, like my last year and a half of college, I got really just stuck in this and was dying yarn out of like a 900 square foot apartment and with 3 dogs and just trying to make it work. And finally, about 2 years ago, I was encouraged by another yarn dyer, Nicole of Hugh Loco. We went and visited her a couple times, or we visited her, but have seen her a couple times. And she was just like, you need to get a studio. You're at that point. I'm like, okay. So now I have a studio about like 20 minutes away from my house. And I just feel like the last 2 years especially have been a huge whirlwind of just designing and just trying to keep up and come up with new things. But the designing is, I think, what really I wasn't planning for, kind of, because I started designing so that I could sell more yarn.
Yeah.
That was the whole reasoning behind it, because I'm like, well, everyone has kits for all these things, but I could design something in my own yarn and publish it in that yarn. And then I fell in love with the process and again figured out I didn't have to do my own math because I hired a tech editor, and you can hire tech editors to size grade for you. I'm like, okay, since I have crippling anxiety when it comes to numbers, this is a good idea.
That's nice.
So it's kind of a really long-winded, all over the place way of saying what my fiber journey is. But yeah, that's kind of how it's felt. It's kind of been a little all over the place for the past 5 years.
Yeah. Did you ever imagine that you would be like where you are now, like 5 years ago?
Oh no. And honestly, had I known how hard it was, I probably would have stopped right there. I had really bad motivation about 5 years ago. So I'm glad it was a process, and I'm glad it was a learning experience, and that it took this long to get to this place, because if for some crazy reason it would have just instantly happened, I wouldn't have known how to handle it
Yeah.
and not known where to go from there. So I'm glad it did take as long as it did, but it still seems like it went so quickly.
Yeah. Mm. And so I'm kind of curious then, Trysten, and obviously I knew a little bit about your backstory, right? Because I've talked about it, I've heard you talk about it on your Instagram, on YouTube. And I'm curious how like self-care maps onto your journey in the fiber community. You were a psych major, you were working with those girls at that center. So does it fit into this world of yours, or are they kind of separate things?
It's kind of funny because there's a saying that if you do what you love every day, you'll never work a day in your life.
Mm-hmm.
And I feel like that really does pertain to my life a ton, especially because this was what my self-care was at the very beginning. Like, self-care was taking an hour and dyeing up a batch of yarn. It was feeling really accomplished and pushing myself a little bit more and more and more. Self-care was holding myself accountable and being able to kind of reap the rewards of what I was doing. Like, it was a little accomplishments along the way at the very beginning, like knitting something and people loving what I did, or dyeing a colorway that like 5 people liked on Instagram. I'm just like, oh my gosh. That's so validating. But the process behind it, like actually creating that and like being inspired to make things, that was a huge aspect of why I think I fell in love so much with this well, community, but also this work. And I mean, now it's more like, oh, you're dyeing yarn like 15 hours a day. You're designing on the weekends. You're designing when you get off work until about 2 a.m. You're like doing all these things. But I think the designing is what has turned into a lot of the self-care for me, at least more so recently. But yeah. I mean, I still take my baths. I still, take some time off, and every now and then I'll play some video games or something like that. But I think that knitting and dyeing yarn is so far ingrained with my self-care, because it gives me so much opportunity to express myself and to put passion into the things I love, like book series and geeky things. It just, I don't know.
What do you
it started out as an outlet, but now it's like taking care of my soul.
Are there parts of it that have changed? Because I imagine, at least for me, I know when I started dyeing yarn, I had way less time to knit or like do the other things that I used to do. Like you're saying, that was like, oh, I used to like knit over my lunch hour, and that was my self-care. But then it turned into like, oh, now I have to prep yarn, or I have to do this. And so has it changed at all, like I guess what function it serves, or how it nurtures your soul?
I think it has. It's kind of hard to explain, but going to work and feeling accomplished is one of the forms of self-care. But I know knitting and sitting and just kind of basking in the moment, and having mindfulness moments is so great for me, and I get to do that on the weekend as well. But sometimes I'll just take a full day off and sit on my couch at work and just knit. Or I'll get inspired in the middle of the night and be like, you know what, cancel all tomorrow's plans. I'm dyeing up a new series. I'm dyeing up a new collection. It's going to be so much fun because I want to make this and this and this and this. I want this to happen. I want this color work to happen. Like, this sweater was full on. This is my autumn court sweater. This was full on self-care, 100%. This was taking all my inspiration in one night. I'm just like, I need this. I need this in my life. I need to do the color work. And it came about, I think, in during Stitches West or Rhinebeck. 2 years ago. I can't remember. But it was like I had all these other things I had to do. I had to keep my mind on, but I'm just like, no, screw it. I need to cast this on. I need something happy and fun. And I don't know. I think being able to say, hey, I don't need to do all these things right now, but I need to do this for me has been a huge thing that I've had to kind of figure out how to balance in my life.
Yeah.
And figure out what things are a priority, because I know I need to make myself and my emotional health a huge priority before I can take on all these millions of things. But I think balance has been something I've been able to learn, especially this year with how chaotic it's been. I think a lot of yarn dyers are finding out it's been a little bit busier this year than we were planning on. So yeah, I think the balancing act has shifted a ton, just with being a little bit more busy, with getting more inspired, with being a little bit more successful. You really have to learn how to adjust and kind of morph into something else, but still making sure that your priority and your family's priority and your mental health stays at the forefront is a huge thing. And I think for the most part, a lot of my followers kind of get that. And so they kind of excuse me when I'm like, I'm not working today, you guys. Not doing that. So
yeah. And that makes sense too, right? If they're like following you and they know what you're about.
Yeah.
It makes sense to do that.
I also give myself attainable goals, which is huge. And so my deadlines on shipping is 1 to 2 weeks, regardless. And if it's a pre-order, 3 to 5 weeks. Usually I get it out within 2, but I'm like, give myself the grace period. I'm not going to set myself up for failure or set myself up for an unattainable goal that's just going to drive me crazy. I'm not going to lift myself up to a bar that I can't reach. I'm going to make sure that it's something that I can maintain. And I think that has helped a ton.
Yeah. Because it's not just that one pre-order, right? It's like you're saying what's going to be sustainable over time. And then people know what to expect. And if they can wait a few weeks, then they'll do a pre-order. And if they can't, then that's fine. But even
I usually die up some extras. But it's like you have to, with the juggling act, I have one pre-order going at a time, so I don't totally go crazy. One pre-order going at a time. And during each week, I try to, on all bases, if I can, dye at least 3 colorways during the week. So that's about 120 skeins on top, or 120 skeins a day per color that I do. And then on top of that, the days that I'm not, the alternating days, like the Tuesday and Thursday, I'll dye up those pre-orders. And then the following Monday, come in, package, wind, all that jazz. And then Tuesday, start the whole process again, but only do it with 4 days. And then alternate back to the 3 days. So it's a lot, but we have a system. And I hired my husband in October. So that's been helping a lot too.
Yeah, I saw that on your Vlogmas. I was like, wait, Eric's going to prep yarn? I was like, is Eric working for her right now? Is that what's happening?
Yeah, I begged him to quit his job. He's like, okay. It took a little while. I feel so grateful because he really likes his coworkers. So I got him a coworker. I got him little Lulu, our little Frenchie. And so she goes back and forth with us to work, and she has her little spot, and she's a great studio dog. She just kind of chills. She has this giant spider basket that she just curls up on or in, and she just hangs out, and sometimes will come out when we don't have yarn out, and it's been great. But he goes in and does a lot of the prep work that takes about 3 hours out of my day, 4 hours out of my day, but he soaks all the yarn. I think I have a different process for soaking yarn than a lot of people, except my mom. We do it very similarly, but so he goes in, he soaks all the yarn for about 4 hours. And then while that's soaking and everything, he'll wind the yarn from the night before.
Okay.
So it's really helpful, especially because he started when we were doing Advents. That was helpful.
Nice.
That was really helpful.
It's also really cool, Trysten. Like I hear when you talk about the different parts of your work that are fulfilling, and it feels cool because you're like, you have a few different angles. Like sometimes I take care of myself by like chilling and taking a bath, or like taking a mindful moment, or taking the day off. But then I also hear part of your self-care is like challenging yourself and pushing yourself to try something difficult, or expressing something inside of you or that inspires you and putting that onto yarn. Is that something that you did like consciously? Like, oh, I want to make sure I have all these different ways to take care of myself, or did that just happen?
I think it was a very organic thing at the very beginning, and I didn't know how to handle it because I wanted to do all these things at the same time. And then over time, it's a very conscious thing that I do. And I'll kind of know the night before what I actually need to get done, what I can postpone if I need to, if I really want to push myself, why I want to push myself, the ideas behind all the things I want to do, if that's something that's healthy for me, or if doing that right now is not a good thing, if that would push me too far, if that would crack my mental stability. There's a lot of there's a lot of things going on at the same time. One of my old bosses, she used to say that it looks like it was always like I was looking down 100 different tunnels at the same time. But I feel like I can get so many things accomplished and feel fulfilled and feel taken care of if I do different things. Because if I'm doing the same thing every time, it almost, for me, it could be like a crutch.
Yeah.
And a reason just to not push myself as far. But if I take enjoyment and I get something out of it when I'm pushing myself, or when I'm taking some time for myself, it actually ends up making me feel healthier the rest of the time.
Yeah. And that, I mean, it sounds like, even though it seems to kind of have evolved from like, oh, I was just doing it and then I figured out almost how to do it better, or like how to actually be thoughtful about how I'm doing this.
Mm-hmm.
It's like that takes a lot of self-awareness, or like attention to what's going on internally and externally, like what you have to get done, and kind of be organized about it.
Yeah, I like to tell people I'm not very organized, but I don't think that's accurate. I think it's because, honestly, like, I do have ADHD and I do have a very chaotic brain. And so if I don't have these different types of outlets, then I do kind of fall back on laziness and bad motivation. Like, years and years ago, it feels like now, but it was only like maybe 5 or 6 years ago before I started college, I had very, very bad work ethic, bad motivation, bad all these things. And I know that if I want to keep healthy and happy, I need to learn what things actually give me self-worth, value, help me take my breaks, help me not get burned out. I need to do those things, because if I fall back on just one of those things, like, hey, you need to take it easy, you don't need to get all these things done, you don't need to push yourself, that'll hit up my depression. And so I can't do that. So I have to make sure that every week, every day, I kind of have a set plan. That's also why, like, we have 2 garages. I could have my studio here. I will never have my studio here, because I know I need to leave my house to take care of my mental health. I need to leave to make sure that I see things outside of my own zone. And so that's the first thing every single day that pushes me. Even if I go to my studio, hang up all the yarn that I soaked the night before, and just say I'm not dying today, and just sit on the couch and sit in there and be present and stuff, and then go home, that's still so much to accomplish. And it is also like taking care of myself mentally.
Yeah, I imagine a lot of people can relate to that too, after this year and being in some state of quarantine and having hours home, and sometimes not an opportunity to leave. It's really hard when you get stuck. It's not even like a routine. It's like you just get in a rut of doing the same thing. And so being intentional about switching that up and having that for yourself. I'm curious too, Trysten, like, obviously you were in psych. Obviously your mom, for folks who don't know, is also, right, a therapist. And
Mm-hmm. I'm not a therapist. Mm-hmm. Making sure that's fully aware. I have a degree in it. So
and what influence, I guess, did that have an influence, you think, on you taking care of yourself? Or is that something you were always just kind of good at, or mindful of? Where did that come from for you?
College. It actually took me learning about psychology to be able to apply it to my own life. I was a stubborn ass little girl. I'm sorry, can I swear on here? Okay. I was a stubborn ass. And I grew up thinking I was open-minded and selfless, but as soon as you start learning about these inner workings, you just realize, oh my God, I'm so selfish. I don't see things from anyone else's perspective. I don't actually have an open mind about things. And it took me learning how to actually look at myself and see what I needed, because a lot of the times we are really hard on ourselves. We think we need something that we don't need. We think that we're doing everything right, and it's hard to kind of have to learn how to have the awareness that, hey, maybe I'm not doing this right. Maybe this isn't what I need. And it's just that kind of mentality that opens you up to learning, to learning how to be healthy, to learn how to be healthy instead of just being like, oh no, I'm good. I'm great, thanks. But I don't think I would have learned how to do any of this had I not gone to college, even just a little bit, because it taught me how to work with people. It helped me learn how to collaborate and how to have communication skills with other people, and learn how to deal with confrontation, because you deal with that online a lot, and just learning how to be positive about things and not sweat the small stuff or pet the sweaty things, how my husband says it. But
I've never heard that before. That's so funny.
yeah, he's great.
And
But yeah, no, I didn't know how to do any of this before that. And I think that's what helped me actually become a business owner and further along that way.
yeah, was that an easy transition, or was that easy for you to learn? I know I'm channeling my own asshole teenage self and remembering what it was like when I went to college and learned some of the stuff that you're talking about. Was that an easy process for you?
No, it really wasn't, but mainly I think because I took a few years off. I got married really young. I got married at 19. I was 19 for a month when I got married. Yeah. And I didn't start going to college until I was 23. And even there's so many young kids with me there too. I don't know, like, I think it was definitely hard for me, but I was a little less stubborn about it, about learning about these new things. But it definitely made me reconsider some of my own core values and what I actually wanted out of life, and what I actually like knew I could accomplish, or what I could be.
Yeah.
So I mean, I went through my sign language course, got 78% done, and then I'm like, no, I'm gonna do psychology.
Wow.
So I took one psychology class, and I'm like, this is revolutionary. So
Yeah. Wow.
you know.
Uh-huh. Yeah. Yeah, I wasn't originally a psych major either. I was elementary education. And then I switched going into my senior year. So I was like probably about the same as you. And I was like, I don't know. I kind of like this thing. Maybe I should keep doing that.
Well, because it applies to so many aspects of your life as a person. And it really applies to any kind of career field you end up going into. Like I worked at the girls' home for 2.5 years and quit when they wanted me to be a house lead. I'm like, no, a little too empathetic for that. So, because yeah, when you work in those settings, if you're very empathetic, you end up taking a lot of the stuff home with you. And I was 24/7 on edge about things, about girls running, about girls, all that jazz. And so then I worked for about a year in at my mom's clinic, just working with like the Medicare population, helping with insurance and stuff. And finally got to a place where I'm like, I'm gonna get a studio. I'm gonna do this full time. It's time, which is crazy, but
Yeah, it's awesome too. I'm curious too hearing like a little bit about your personality. It sounds like it was actually really great for you to be your own boss and to kind of go through that process of learning what that would be like. Are there challenges at all that pose to taking care of yourself?
sorry, you cut out a little bit. What'd you say?
Are there any challenges that that poses in terms of like taking care of yourself? It sounds like there are a lot of benefits. Like if you need to take the day off and you know how to figure out how to get everything else done at a later time, you can do that. Are there things that make it hard to take care of yourself, being your own boss, owning your own business?
Oh, absolutely. One thing that I've struggled with, yarn, come on.
Oh no. Is it
I'm
bad?
not working on this project anymore. I was smart and had a blanket in the same bag as a mohair project. And it just got tangled. So we're just going to put that aside for a minute because that's a design.
No.
And we're going to pick up this emergency sock I have on hold.
Is it your cardigan that you have?
Yeah, it's my cardigan. Just like, damn it. Because I finally figured out how I'm doing the cardigan. I'm so excited. I bought vintage buttons off Etsy, and that's kind of like what inspired this whole new design. I'm just like, vintage fabric buttons. So
Excited for that.
yeah, but working for yourself is really hard. Again, like I had really bad motivation a couple years ago, and I don't think I could have done this back then at all because you have to have a lot of daily motivation to get stuff done. And that's why I do put goals. I do put like shipping dates on everything because I have to keep up on top of that because it would be so easy just to fall back into that old habit, into that old routine. I know for me, I have to wear a lot of gear. If you saw my Vlogmas, you may have seen that. I have to wear a back brace. I have to wear knee braces. I have specialty ergonomic shoes for people with metatarsal palegia, I think, which is apparently what I have in my feet. I have to use a TENS unit. I was actually supposed to be wearing it right now, but it does like electric pulses through wherever, and I wear that on my back usually when I come home or on the weekends just to kind of make everything good. Every night when I come home, I have to do like a scalding bath to make sure everything relaxes before bed and it doesn't just kind of tense up because you're carrying, like I have 12 burners and I can do like 3 loads a day. And depending on what yarn it is, if it's a tonal, it weighs each pan. It has a pan and then an insert, and I dye on both of the levels. And so it weighs about 20 pounds if it's a tonal because it's really like full of water and heavy. And so it's just back and forth. So it really tears up your body. And I hired my husband so that I could save my hands from squeezing yarn. We actually got a mop bucket to squeeze the yarn out.
That's brilliant.
Oh yeah. Oh yeah. It saves time too. So there's a lot of like long-term effects on your body that you have to pay attention to. And I wasn't doing that for a while. And I was just like, work through the pain. And I went from dyeing like 120 skeins a day to like 6.
Oof.
And this was like in October of this year. Like I was really slowing down.
I remember you posting about that and you were like, I just can't dye yarn now. Like I can't. I need to take time.
Yeah.
Oh.
So it was really good being able to hire him and have him come in. And first day, he's like, you need higher tables. You need this. You need more work mats. You need this. And I'm like, okay. And so within the first week, we were able to look at everything and be like, oh, my back feels a lot better. Thank you.
Sometimes it just takes a new pair of eyes on it, right? To be like, realize this is what's happening. And you're like, oh yeah, thanks for that.
Yeah, no, so that was really great. And sometimes, I mean, it's hard to gauge and you have to really pay attention to like what you can accomplish, what you want to accomplish, but what you can accomplish. And sometimes it's just not in the cards, or sometimes you forget that you have to dye this colorway out that you totally spaced out on, or someone was being very, very patient on a pre-order and you didn't realize that it's 4 months late and they were just sweethearts about it. And so oh my gosh, Advents mess everything up, I swear to God.
Oh, that's rough.
Yeah, well,
time consuming.
But I think just not being hard on yourself if you can't accomplish something is a huge thing, and not doing side comparisons to what other dyers are accomplishing, because that's not you. That's not your plan. That's not what you have to put your bar at. You put your bar where you need it to be, where you can have it without constantly falling short of it. I think that's a huge thing because your bar can move as you progress. Your bar goes up or down depending on where you're at, and that's fine.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And I mean, because I think something a lot of people don't know if you're not dyeing yarn, and like, again, I only am seeing a glimpse into it. I'm way smaller and newer in this field, right? And I'm like, wow, people don't realize what a physical toll this work can take on your body. Like lifting things, moving things, carrying things, winding things, squeezing things out. But also to do that for 12, 15 hours a day is like physically exhausting. And I imagine like mentally tiring. Like that's just a lot of hours to use your brain to do something.
You want to know why all my colorways are inspired by books?
Yeah, I get that. I get that.
Yep. I listened to all of Lord of the Rings in like 4 days.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah. So a lot of people ask me where my inspiration comes from. It mainly comes from books because I have to feel, you're right, it is so mentally exhausting. And so a lot of the times, what me and Eric have been doing recently is we listen to a podcast together, which I highly recommend, Dungeons and Daddies, not a BDSM podcast. That's actually in the title. It's pretty great. Or in the definition of the description of the podcast, but it's on iTunes. It's so funny. It's 4 comedians, 1 girl and 3 guys, and it's a Dungeons and Dragons thing, but I don't even play that. And it's hilarious. And it's just it's so good.
Play, but is it something that folks who don't play can also listen to? Okay. I'll have to check it out.
If you have a vague idea of what Dungeons and Dragons is about, like, oh, it's a game that you roll dice to play. Good enough.
That's good. Oh my gosh.
It's so funny. But we listen to it during the day because he's usually there till about 2:30 or 3.
Okay.
Because he gets there also earlier than I do. And so we listen to that during the morning, afternoon, and then I put my books on, I put my audiobooks on, and then I just listen through the rest of the night. And that's where all of the colorways come from.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I get that. I hear that.
Yeah. You have to have something kind of always going for you to be able to get inspired. And I think that's a huge reason of why dyeing yarn is also kind of a huge positive thing, and it helps my mental health because listening to all those books, because my ADHD, listening to all those books, I want to do something at the same time. I want to do something to express it, and I'm able to, hey, look, yarn right in front of me. I'm able to do that, or plan collections, or even plan designs while I'm dyeing yarn. I'm like processing these other little things because of my ADHD brain.
Yeah.
And it helps me kind of, dyeing yarn actually helps me be mindful, because I don't know about you, but I stick my hands in the dye, in the yarn, mess it around, flip it around, squeeze it out, pull it out, do whatever. And it helps me be very intentional with every color. And so I feel like I'm very present when I'm doing that, while an audiobook is going on in the background.
Yeah. There's also like such a, at least for me, and I'm guessing that you're the same way. There's like an element of like play in yarn and dyeing yarn, like mentally, like, right, it's like you're playing house, or you're playing Lord of the Rings, and you're like imagining characters, and you're getting to actually create things in front of you, like a little kid would draw or like make from Legos or do something. But then like the physical part of like getting to mix colors and paint yarn and like mix it around, like there's not many times in my life that I get to play and do something like so fun and creative with my hands. And I think a lot of people would probably say that. A lot of adults who are not like art teachers, like Wendy, who's here, but they probably don't get the chance to do that. And that I feel like just does something to your brain that you wouldn't get otherwise.
Yeah, no, I think it's a very good artistic outlet, but it also like if you're anything like me and you like embody the soul of the characters when you're reading them, it's a physical way to represent what you feel their soul looks like. And
Mm-hmm.
that's huge way of expressing like my love of different things is usually my love of characters or a storyline or one little word. Like in the Aragon series, it's all about dragons and cool shit. But there's one character in it who's a witch, and you don't really know that much about her or anything. She's not essential necessarily to the storyline, but there's one line or one little part in the book where she's like, oh yeah, they call me the Moon Eater. And Aragon's like, why? And she's like, oh, because I ate the moon. And so I'm like, I need that as a colorway. So I created Moon Eater. And it has nothing, like everyone's like, is that a Court of Thorns and Roses? I'm like, no, it's just this random word from a book that I once read.
That's so
but
cool.
I was able, it like expressed such a desire in me of like that whole witchiness. I'm just like, oh, that, yeah, right here.
Yeah.
And so you're able to express that in a physical way. And it also reinforces when people are like, oh, I love that color, or I love what you did with that, that it's like a magical, I mean, you can also get very dependent on that. And I think in the first like year or so, I really, really did and did a lot of like negative cross comparisons with other dyers with me. And so that's something I also constantly am trying to be aware of. Like, they are not me. I am not them. They can be successful their way. I can do it my way and still be successful. But yeah, that just being able to see that other people love things as much as you do too. It's a great return on something that you're really, really passionate about.
Yeah. And it sounds like when you create a colorway and it really connects with something deep in your personhood, and then you see someone else who buys it because they're like, wow, I connect to that. Like that connects to me. And it's like, how cool that we have this link or like this bond of something that like I might never meet this person ever, but we just have this commonality or like universal thing that we can connect with and that resonates with us. Like that's just so cool.
Oh yeah. No, I love connecting with people over weird things like that.
And like even hearing you say like it's nourishing for me and it's fulfilling, it's a lot of hours and it's a lot of time. And so to come home then at sometimes 10, sometimes 12, sometimes 1 in the morning, like I have seen you come home, what keeps you taking the time to take care of yourself? Because I imagine it could easily be like, no, I don't have time for that, or I'm too tired for that. But what do you think keeps you kind of taking those moments to do whatever you need for yourself at that point?
I just remember that I am in charge of myself. I get to decide my schedule. I get to decide whether or not I take the time for myself. And if I don't, it's going to mess me up further on down the road. Because I've done that. I've burned myself out. Totally burned myself out. You don't know how many times at the end of the year I'm like, Mom, I can't do Advent anymore. I just can't do it. I'm not going to do it. Not this year.
Yeah.
But you have to make an effort. And if you get home late, be like, okay, you did a lot of work today. Even at the studio, I'm like, okay, I'm just gonna do it. Grit my teeth and do it. And then tomorrow I'm gonna come in later. I'm gonna sleep in a little bit, or I'm gonna take tomorrow off, or I'm going to make sure I take a bath tonight and I can do it again tomorrow, but I'm getting pie in the morning. Like just little things like that. Cause I know I can go on little sleep if I need to, but it's always better if I have a little bit more sleep than I think I need. And since I am a night owl and I already know I have a hard time waking up in the morning, it's easy for me to come home and be like, I need a bath, I need a shower, but mainly I need a bath so I can soak everything so that I can keep going tomorrow, because I know that I won't be able to actually do things again tomorrow if I don't take the time to do self-care in the moment when I get home.
Yeah. Yeah, I think hearing that, it's a theme that's come up week after week here, and a lot of folks saying like self-care isn't really a choice for me. Well, I guess it is maybe a choice in the long term, or in the short term, but in the long term, if I don't do it, it's gonna bite me in the ass. So like I don't really have much of a choice. Or make a point to like remember that I'm doing this now so that it takes care of me in the future and I can keep doing the things I want to do.
Yeah.
Hmm.
No, I think it's very necessary if you want to do something like this, especially if you want to be your own boss, because I didn't know how hard, like, honestly, I didn't know how hard I'd be working. I didn't know how much it did take to be your own boss, be a business owner, and be having your hands literally in every pot of the work. And so making sure that I am able to take a bath every now and then, set myself up for success instead of failure body wise.
Mm-hmm.
It's very necessary because I know I wouldn't be happy unless I was dyeing yarn, because again, that fulfills so much with me as well. And so if I want to keep doing that, if I want to keep working hard, if I want to keep creating all these colors and being super weird about it, then I have to make sure that when I get home, I take a bath, I relax for at least a half hour before I go to bed, and am able to sleep in if I need to, get up early if I need to, take the whole day off if I need to.
Yeah.
But do what I need to do.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Also, Wendy, I don't know if you know Wendy Trysten of Warm Stripes. She said she's an art teacher.
Warm Stripes.
Mm-hmm. So she knows about these things. But she said, Trysten, you sound like you're a kinesthetic learner, so you have to be moving to think and create.
Yes.
I feel like.
Yes, I can't be idle. Even like, because I think we all kind of got on the Animal Crossing train at the beginning of the year. Hardcore. Yeah. So many hours.
It.
Oh my God, don't do it.
I know. That's what I'm like.
It's a trap. Don't do it.
I know. That's why everyone's like, don't do it. Don't do it. You'll be sucked in. So I'm like, okay, I don't want to get close to it. But like, I get so much FOMO when I hear people be like, oh, Animal Crossing. I'm like, but what is it? I want to play.
It's a very good game where it's very psychological. It gives you very like when you start playing the first, let's say 16 hours of gameplay, it's very short-term attainable goals that pass you on to another goal, to another goal, to another goal, and just keeps you moving that way. So it's very psychologically brilliant how they put it together, and it'll rope you in. I don't care who you are, you will be playing that hardcore for the first little while. And so,
oh my gosh,
I play it every now and then, but like even other video games and stuff, I have a hard time because if I'm not seeing an end result that's a physical end result, then like my brain just doesn't, I just can't. Yeah. Like Eric made a light proof room downstairs for the bat cave or whatever. And it has blackout curtains and stuff, but I still have to have the light on because I'm not going to watch movies down there unless I can be knitting. Because I can't just sit there. I will be suffering.
Yeah.
Unless I have something to do. Or I'll be on my phone.
Yep. That's what happened. Thanksgiving. I think it was Thanksgiving. I didn't realize this until like what you're saying. I'm like, I feel that so hard, and I didn't realize how hard I felt that until Thanksgiving. I've been living with, when I go home for like weekends with my nan since my grandpa passed away in April. But like we're with my mom and sister every day. They live like 10 minutes apart. So for Thanksgiving, I was at my grandma's house and we went over to my mom's house and I brought a knitting bag and I left my needles.
I saw that and I felt so bad for you.
Trysten, I was dying. Like I didn't drive or I would have gotten right in my car and gone back. And I was like, what? I can't just sit here. Like, what am I supposed to do? And my family, my mom and sister were like joking about it. And my mom's boyfriend was like, you're like actually having a hard time. And I was like, yes, like my brain is just going. I don't know what to do. He was like, do you like want me to drive you to Nanny's? Like, I'll take you if you want. And I was just like, how do you do this? Like, you just sit here and do this?
You just sit here without doing anything with your hands?
I don't understand.
I've had a few moments like that. And so what I'll do is I'll get on like Stitch Fiddle, which is a website that I use for my patterns for color work. Mm-hmm. Or if I have any, because usually if I have a knitting bag, I usually have a snack, markers, chart book, notebook. I don't think I'd ever leave. I have left the house without the needles I needed. And so I decided to rip out the pattern I was working on and design something new because I just could not. And so what I'll do if I ever get into those situations, or if I go to like Home Depot or Lowe's with Eric and he's like, okay, you sit here with the cart, I'm going to go look at something. I'm like, I should have brought my knitting inside. I'll get on there and I'll start kind of designing little colorwork motifs or ideas with lace or something, or I'll scroll through Pinterest and just slowly be compartmentalizing and creating a design, piecing ideas together of what I like off of Pinterest boards, like the scoop of the neck. I like that. I like the set and sleeves of this. I like kind of that fit. I like kind of this fabric it creates. I like this little motif here, but I wouldn't use that. I'd use this, or I do color work with this. And so if I can't be physically doing something with my hands, I'm processing a million things up here.
Yep. And it sounds like that's a great idea. And you're going to get me into designing color work. And then my whole family's going to hate you for that, because that's going to bring me down a whole nother rabbit hole.
You're welcome.
So that's fine.
I highly encourage everyone to start designing. I think it's so fun. And we always want to change like one thing with the pattern, or wish a pattern was like this instead, or like the fit of a sleeve. I've heard of a lot of larger women being like, oh yeah, some of these patterns from this one designer are like super large here in the arms and it's not supposed to be. And so like figuring that thing out of like what works for you and your own body is like the beginning step. And I tell everyone that I'm like, just start designing. It's so much fun. You don't have to do the math if you don't want to.
And it's addicting. Even like I made literally one sock pattern. My flannel shirt socks. I was like, okay, one pattern, that's it. I like had the idea in my head. I just want to do it and see if I could do it. And then I did it and I was like, oh, so I'm not going to design anything else. And then like immediately was like, no, that's silly. I already had 3 more ideas in my head. And like, oh, what if I just did this and played with the numbers, and then I could make a hat, and then I could make a cowl, and then I could do it's addicting.
It's very addicting because it's basically pulling out things that you know that you love about different designs, about different garments, about different color schemes, about different fabric textures. It's so much fun because your design elements speak to at least one person out there. And so they're going to get inspired from that and possibly start their own designing from that. It's just like, we can just piggyback on each other, you guys.
Yep.
So I always encourage people, like, even if you don't know how to write it down for you. And if you don't know how to do the size grading or anything, neither do I.
Pay someone.
That's fine. Yeah, you can pay someone. Usually, like, it is a bit of a chunk of money. And usually, like, my designs are able to pay for my tech editor. That's about it. But yeah, it's funny. There's not a ton of money in design work, but it's a lot of fun. And that's honestly why I do that. And so I can play around with the yarn with it. But usually, depending on how you promote yourself, how you put yourself out there, who you are like, hey, I'm doing a design. Do you want to make kits in your yarn? Like, here's this, like, here's the full pattern. That's what I did with the first couple of my designs. I'm like, hey, you seem to like this. Do you want the pattern? You can make kits, you can knit it up, whatever, blah, blah, blah. But it's like how you promote it and stuff. But usually the tech editor gets paid for eventually through the pattern sales. And so I think it's a good thing, a good balance for that, honestly.
Yeah. And Trysten, I'm curious too, because I'm aware of the time, and I know I could now talk about designing for hours, because I think that's my new, like you said, a new thing to challenge myself, express myself. And I think it definitely feeds me in a different way than knitting does, in a different way than dyeing does. It's just another way of doing it and like mixing that in. And so and I'm going to put you on the spot, because something we've been doing in these videos, and I don't know if you know this or not, is that every week, the maker that I'm interviewing gives a challenge or call to action or like homework assignment for folks who are watching. And then they go and do a thing that is in some way related to self-care from your point of view, something that you would suggest or encourage they try. And then they'll post about it and tag us in it. And I don't know if that's something that you had thought about at all, or if you have any ideas of things that you would like to encourage folks to do.
Honestly, I think I get asked all the time, like, how do I become successful at dyeing yarn? How do I become successful at designing? How do I become like all these things? And I'm like, I'm not really qualified to say anything because it's a different process for all of us.
Mhm.
But I always encourage reaching out to someone that you admire and letting them know, hey, I really, really love this about your designs, or hey, I really admire you for this. I really admire your yarn for this. Because sometimes it's those little mental blocks of thinking, you know, it's a whole psychological thing and it's a whole steps program.
Mhm.
But if you are wanting to be a designer, to be a greater knitter, to learn a new talent, anything like that, a lot of the times we're our biggest critics and we're like, oh no, we could never measure up to this person. We could never do what this person is doing. And so I always encourage people, hey, reach out to the people you admire, reach out to one person that you admire, and just start kind of that conversation. Because as soon as people stop being on pedestals, more things seem attainable and more things seem like, hey, this is something I could learn how to do. It's not like this person isn't way up there. It's, you know what I mean?
Uh-huh.
But just opening up dialogue and stop like being so scared of someone else's success or someone else's personal standard of themselves and measuring yourself against that. If you open up some dialogue and start bringing in, hey, there's a reality to this. We're all humans.
Yep.
Some people work, you know, a day job. Some people work at the grocery store. Like we're all just humans, and it's ourselves that are holding us back usually from being what we want to be, or starting down a path that we don't think we can do.
Mm-hmm.
So I say reach out to someone that you admire this week and just letting them know, hey, I admire this about you, and starting kind of that more of that dialogue.
I love this. I love this so much because I don't know, it's one of those things that's, I think you maybe have said this in the past and watching some of your older YouTube videos with mom, that like if you don't know something scary and you just do it, like it's usually not that hard. Like brioche,
Yeah.
if you don't know it's a scary thing and you just do it, it's like, oh, okay, that's fine. But then something happens where you're like, oh, brioche, that's like a really advanced thing. Don't, you know, you have to be worried about that. And then it's like really scary to do. And it makes me think of like when I first made my knitting Instagram, I didn't realize that like there were not like celebrities, but like, oh, this is like a big person. This is, I remember when I like found your account and I was like, oh my God, she seems so cool. And I don't remember what it was, but I like probably just messaged you about a colorway or like something you posted and was like, haha, that's so funny. And I remember someone being like, oh my God, like, I can't believe you like just messaged Trysten. And I was like, what?
Why wouldn't I?
Supposed to do that? Like, was that, they were like, well, I would never like have the nerve to do that. And I was like, oh, I don't know. She responded back. She seems pretty cool. Like, I think it's okay. Like, I think it's fine. But I think you're right that sometimes we have this idea that's like, oh, I'm not supposed to do that. Or like, I can't talk to the person who's on like this tier, or it's uncomfortable to like share your appreciation of someone and some skill that they have. And so I love this idea. And whether it's something specific, like maybe something you're wanting to do for your own self care, like, oh, I really want to get into weaving or punch needling. If there's someone that you admire, like reach out to them, just say hi and share that. Even if it's not a specific thing, people could just reach out to someone who's like, wow, they seem like they really take good care of themselves or have like some sort of balance. Like you're saying, they could still reach out and just say like, hey, I love your work, I love what you're doing, like I'm so inspired by how you find balance in your life or what you share with us. And I think opening those doors feels so important always, but like especially right now.
Oh yeah, especially right now. And I have to say this, there are only like 2 people in the entire universe world that I've ever been like shut down from whenever this has been a thing, like me reaching out or anything like that. And if that is ever something that someone like comes in contact with and that shuts them down further, just remember that's on them. That's their issue. And if that's how they want to do their thing and be successful and be happy, like that's their thing. That's fine.
Mm-hmm.
That's probably not going to work for everyone. And it's not necessarily the healthiest way to go about things. And so if you ever get shut down from someone, that's fine. Move on. Obviously, they're not necessarily healthy people to follow.
Mm-hmm.
Say that with a really high pitched voice because I'm not a complete expert on it. But just keep trying, keep doing all that. Because everyone they're if you hadn't have reached out to me and then flash me your ass later, I don't think we'd be friends. And that would have just sucked because that was like the highlight of Rhinebeck for me last year.
But that is exactly one of those moments where when I like told people or people heard, they were like, oh my God, like what's wrong with you? Like, are you dying like of embarrassment? How could you do? And I was like, no, I just did it. I don't know. Like, I didn't think too much about it or else maybe I wouldn't have, but like, that's just what I felt like doing. So I just did it. So if there's,
I try to reach out to every single person who ever reaches out to me and repost anything that anyone posts on their story. Like that is very huge with me, with my brand, with what I like, what kind of positivity I want to put out in the world and what the connection is, because I don't know if you know about me, but I've been kind of living that pandemic lifestyle for about 2.5, 3 years now. Just, I don't socialize very often. And so my life is online and all my friends are online. And I don't think I would have any of those friends who are online, who a lot of them, not all of them, obviously, a lot of people I meet actually at shows who come up and be like, hey, I admire you. How are you doing? And I'm like, let's go to dinner.
Yeah.
But a lot of them are, personalities, people that are online that people know. And I think had I not started like poking fun at a post or something, or just treating them like a human being, like as if we were already friends, kind of like, or opening up that chain of communication, I don't think I would have, the friends I do. And I freaking love them. So
yeah.
It's not about meeting someone famous. It's about making true connections with people and realizing that they're not anything other than what we are.
Yeah. Yeah. I really love that. And I love the idea that like, you're going to get a different response. Like people are different, just like sending a DM is like going up to someone at a party, right? Like some people are going to be like, yes, take a selfie. Come on. Like let's go get a drink. Other people are going to be like, oh yeah. Okay. Thanks. No, see you later.
Thanks for coming.
Yeah. Other people will be really uncomfortable. And like, that says more about them than it says about you.
Absolutely.
But it's
just like what space they're at. Yeah. If you don't try, just the same with color work. Like color work was one of the first things I started knitting before I knew it was hard.
Yep. Yeah.
Yeah. Exactly. And so had I known that, had I been scared of doing something like that, I never would have progressed or pushed myself to the next level from that, to the next level, to where I'm at right now. If I would have been like, oh no, that someone says it's hard, I don't know that I can do it. Tension? What's tension? Blocking? Color dominance? I don't know any of these terms. What am I supposed to do? What's gauge? Like, you're going to fail. You're like, sometimes you're just going to fail and you're just going to have to pick up and go on and stuff, because every single time is a learning experience. And if some of the people that you approach, and I say this because I know a few people who have approached, and I don't want to set anyone up for any kind of failure on my advice or my challenge, but I say just keep going out there and keep pushing yourself to do the next scary thing, whether it be introducing yourself to someone and saying, hey, I admire you, thank you for this, or pushing yourself to learn a new technique that people have told you was scary or something like that, Yeah. I think there's always a next step.
Yep. Yeah, I love that. So I'm excited to hear what people are thinking about, who they're going to reach out to, what they're inspired by, or what they're impressed by, and what this person does, if it's a specific skill or something about themselves, and who they're going to reach out to. I'm excited to hear that. I know I've been telling folks, so I'll post probably tomorrow at this point, I'll post Trysten's challenge on my Instagram, on my grid. And so you'll see that one for this week.
And I will repost it, because I repost as much as I can. And I have to say, you are someone that I do admire because of all this that you're doing. I absolutely love that you're doing this on your channel.
Thanks.
Like, I think that's so magical. And it just feels like, from where I met you at Rhinebeck, a year and a half ago or whatnot, just from that. And then hearing that you are shy at those events, it was a new event for you. You're not someone who just goes up and introduces yourself. And then all of a sudden it's like, you're doing this, you're doing your own YouTube channel. Like, I really admire you for pushing yourself and pushing yourself to that next step. I think that's really admirable.
Yeah, I appreciate that. And I'm working on receiving compliments and not deflecting. So I'm just going to say thank you and say that, like you with dyeing yarn, if I knew how much work it was going to be, I might have done this differently. Like, I was just like, oh yeah, how cool would that be to like interview people and just talk with people, and that would be awesome. And now it's like, oh wow, this is like a lot of planning and organization and like behind the scenes that I wasn't taking into account. So I'm glad that people are enjoying it and something away from the videos, and like going through the hashtag and seeing what people are posting. Sometimes it's like about a specific homework assignment or challenge. Sometimes it's just something that they thought of or they were inspired by in watching a video, and it like literally warms my heart and makes this worth it. And I know other people have said that, so I'm glad that people are enjoying this little challenge.
And that's so great, because people just don't, and I have to include myself on this for a very long time too, like people don't necessarily make themselves a priority. And so it's hard for that personal growth. It's hard to learn new skills. It's hard to put yourself out there. It's hard to find new ways to being happy instead of just staying in the same and wondering why it's not working anymore.
Yep.
Like it is, I love that it's hard for you. I love that this is hard for you right now, because every single time you do it, it's just going to get that more easier, that more easy. Crap, I don't know. Grammatically, I'm incorrect, but it'll make it that much more easier. I'm just adding words now.
That much easier
for you the next time. But usually when that happens and it gets easier, you're used to a certain amount of pressure. And so you find something else to incorporate in that. And then the growth zone just happens, because that's one of my favorite things of working in the treatment center with those teenage girls, is because growth doesn't happen in a comfortable area. Growth is very uncomfortable.
Yep.
And so if you're not comfortable and you're in that spot, that just means there's so much more capacity for you to grow and learn from that and push yourself even further into some form of learning, of crafting, of happiness, of joy, of learning about yourself, about putting yourself as priority. Like, it just gives you that much more room.
Yep. Yeah. I mean, you're spot on. And that's something I think I've always embraced and encouraged for other folks, and like even my clients and my coworkers that are like, if it's uncomfortable, that's probably the place we need to go, because that's probably where growth is going to happen. And then it's always nice to remind yourself that like, oh yeah, remember that thing you always tell to people? Like, let's do it and see how it goes, and let's model that. And so I think it's been a really cool experience, and people have been loving it. And we're going right now through March, and there are still so many more makers. Like, the list of people I want to interview just keeps growing and growing. So I decided to cut it off at March and decide this is going to happen annually, at least next year. And so I'm really appreciative of having you and makers, but you specifically tonight here on this. I know you're super busy, and you also have a lot to say. And I think what you have to say is important for people to hear. And so I'm glad that you joined. I'm glad that I reached out to you and I can call you a fiber friend. I'm glad I showed you my butt.
Thank you.
And maybe we'll see you on here again in another year, and you can share all of the new things that you've been pushing yourself to learn and try.
Oh yeah. No, I'd love to come back on. I'd love that. And I love what you're doing. So I'm glad to hear it's going till March, but I hope it is an annual thing, because I think we need more of this out there.
Yeah, I think so too. Cool.
Can you tell that I don't talk very often because my voice is starting to crack?
Like, me too. I hit my limit. Any last final words, Trysten, of wisdom for the people before we sign off?
I don't know. I've been talking so much.
It's okay. That's fine.
I final words is that you're always a priority. You should always be your number one priority. People in your life, family, friends, they are great, but they do not come before you, because if you do not have a firm foundation on yourself, you are not able, no matter what you think, you will not be able to fully help people around you. And so just remember, you are your number one priority. You should always be your number one priority, especially if you want to help other people. So creating that firm foundation and realizing it is a necessity in your life will just be that much greater, because yeah, you can go from there. And I'm not making any sense, but the Maslow's hierarchy of needs, you have to have that firm foundation to be able to go up and do anything else on it. And so, yeah, just remember that you are a priority and you need to be a priority. So use that as an excuse to have an extra slice of cake or go take a bath.
I love it. I'm going to have some cake tonight.
I have a fridge full of cake right now. We forgot to take it to my mom's house. We forgot to take it. And so we have 3 giant pies in there. And I'm just like, breakfast, lunch, dinner, baby.
Oops. Sorry.
Sorry, guys.
All right. Thank you so much, Trysten. It was wonderful having you. Folks, if you're still watching, whether you're watching live, whether you're watching later, make sure you are playing along on Instagram, posting your challenges, sharing what you're doing. Tag myself, tag Trysten. It's almost the end of December, which means we'll be doing this second month. I think it started in November. So the second month of prizes. So get your post in, use the hashtag self-care collaborative 2020, tag me. I scroll through them and repost them.
And I will be donating prizes.
Trysten will be donating prizes. That makes it even more exciting.
So just saying.
Now you definitely need to get your post in. Okay. Awesome. Have a good night, Trysten. Thank you.